Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 6, our final for Frequency Jump. I am joined here with A'HaRa. Thank you for being here and welcome, everyone. Thank you for watching. So, I hope that you've enjoyed unpacking some of the information that we've shared throughout this series. We've covered vast topics that all sort of interweave or are interwoven, very much so. And so, interesting. It feels like now we're just sort of opening up in and around, we've covered about co-creation and the gold frequency, and we've talked about things that obstruct that, but now really coming into looking at or connecting with the blueprint of our own energy field, our mapping, if you will, of our path, our purpose. And I've never really dived into this with you because we might have varying different opinions or vantage points of where that is held and what that looks like. But just in reflection, going back to a lot of the energy, the co-creative energy that was sort of seeping through in and around April, May of this year. And that feels like it's really worked through the body to land and ground. And what I was referring to as Soul Mission 2.0, which is the shared missions, not the individual solo mapping. So even as I'm talking about that, I could see that that was activating in the field for so many people. And it's been this process of integration bit by bit by bit. But it feels like now it's really ripe in the field and it's sort of like spreading out to create a greater grid or map that is like a shared blueprint, if you will. Um, but I'll hand it over to you. And how do you sort of see or witness the blueprint for the individual, and what can you share around that?
Yes. We started with the most massive topic. It's so good. Oh, well, so because I am a body-centric person and that's my focus, is looking at what vehicle the being has chosen for their mission and why. So I speak of it as in terms of a user manual. You have a car
Mhm.
manual for your particular model of car. If you don't have that manual, you don't know how to drive it. You don't know what the power where the power is really centered in that vehicle. And so in different bodies, that's where my analysis goes immediately, is to, well, where are the power centers and where is the power being stifled or held back?
Mm.
So I call it the body blueprint because it is way more detailed and specific and deliberate than we realize. Because even things like bone dimensions, like how long is your femur versus your tibia, or how long is your torso versus the length of your legs, how long are your feet compared to the height of your body. All of these dimensions matter because they tie into the laws of physics.
Mhm.
So everything in nature simply follows energetic patterns, due to gravitational forces mostly, but other forces we can't see. And so the bodies just do the same thing. That's how they function.
Mhm.
So if you have really square shoulders and they sit um, pretty much horizontal like this, or you have slope shoulders, things fall off a slope, things sit on a flat surface. So that's just physics. That's laws of nature at play. And the bodies follow suit. So why would you choose sloping shoulders versus square shoulders? Why would you do that? What for? How does that tie into your mission?
Mhm.
And more importantly, like you mentioned, how does it tie into the co-creation with other bodies?
Mm.
So you need other bodies to complement yours because they hold different properties
Mhm.
to yours. Some people are driving a tractor, other people are driving a Ferrari, and so very different beasts have completely different functions, but both have a purpose
Mhm.
that's necessary in the day to day.
Mhm.
And so most people are driving around, have got no idea what they're driving or why, or, bumbling around and really don't know where they fit or what their value is in the context of a team or a
Mhm.
community,
Mhm.
or a group of people. So that's how I see blueprints, like very high level around the body stuff. And then it's about mapping that with sure, you can say cosmic mission, but I think for me, I look at what type of being is inhabiting that body,
Hmm.
um, and what circuits, what energetic circuitry are they holding, and what is that for?
Mm.
So, yes, you can go into reading the blueprints in people's fields. Sure, you can do that if they are at that level, because some people come here with really clear missions that can be read by like a book, and other people don't. It's not as clear, it's not as specific, and so you can see that by the level of power that is infused into the body and the energetic circuitry. So the more power
Mhm.
that's in the body, the more clear, powerful, and often widespread the mission is.
Mhm.
But that doesn't change the fact that we're all here to co-create, and we have to know how we slot in together.
Mm. Fascinating and beautifully said. I've never really thought about it like that, but it makes perfect sense. Just from an energetic level, looking at compatibility of one person's mission or blueprint and how that interacts with the other. But yeah, the bodies also be complementary parts to that.
Yep. And we talked about frequency matches, and the frequency matches, and just to be clear, a frequency match doesn't mean romance, twin flame, all that kind of karmic connection. This is completely different. A frequency match is going to fire off certain circuits in your body that have been dormant
Mm.
until that person came to your field. And that's why we need all different bodies of the
Mm.
same frequency band to come into our fields to set off different circuits. And that's what I see in the physicality.
Mm.
Certain bodies, so my body types, for like some of my body types are lava and tree. And I live with someone who has soil.
Mm.
And, so she's got the grounding for my tree. And I lift the soil off the ground so it can feel like it's building and growing into a structure. And that's how we complement each other,
Mm. Mhm.
just naturally. So we're just living together. We're just automatically infusing into each other's energy fields, and the bodies actually change and respond to that.
I
You
was
know,
just about to,
yeah.
I was just about to say that because what sparked for me as you've shared that is with particular frequency matches that I've come into contact with over the years. There's only like very small, there's not a huge number of them, but the distinct, because I think that was one of the questions that came through the last video was how do I know if I've met my frequency match? And
Mm,
I would say that the most clear cut response to that would be, has it ignited your mission and your purpose?
yes,
Because
yes.
that is one of the primary functions, I believe, is really to get you on your purpose, on your mission. And they come in at very specific times. And you could be really dormant on your mission, and then all of a sudden you reconnect or connect, and it ignites a fire within of like this is it's a remembrance because there is a greater perhaps cosmic intelligence that is interwoven or
Mm,
interlinked.
mm,
And I've been toying with this. Sorry, I'm going to go off topic a little bit, but been toying with this of how that interweaves with alternate timelines that are coexisting, where potentially you and that person are on a
no,
different
right.
planet or on a somewhere else operating in a
Mm,
mission or co-creation type, and then it's to bring that or an essence or an aspect of that here. um, I
yes.
can honestly say that every time I've been lit and activated, my whole body has gone through a metamorphosis of change, just coming into contact and resonance with the
Mhm.
frequency that's unlocked through those matches. So I can go from having like a very sort of heavy, stagnant body of like maybe carrying too much, fluid or weight or whatever, and just like that, it morphs into what I would consider its perfect form, and
Mm.
that regeneration that it gives because of the frequency that's held or unlocked. So, yeah, interesting point to bring up.
Oh, yeah, this is so juicy. Because the thing about frequency matches, to follow on from that question, how do I know I've met my frequency match is, and maybe this is just my perspective, but I do have multiple frequency matches in my life, all in different categories, right? And I don't think frequency matches ever really go away. So, whereas you can resolve a karmic connection with someone and then it's complete, and that can be a twin flame or whatever, and then it's done. And then, but then other like frequency matches, on the other hand, they may go back into the background for a while. They'll come into the foreground of your life and then back into the background. It could look like that, but they never really go away because your missions are so intertwined. And we're like a web, like the mission is a web of beings all coming together in different functions. So why would they leave your field? They don't, that doesn't make sense. So, yeah, but then other people will step forward because you need a different type of activation. So, yeah, it's fascinating. And definitely what you said, when the body responds to that, that's when there's real change. You're really, there's a transference of energy between you that is alchemical, and it's helping you both with your missions, and it's strengthening the mission as a whole. And the mission I call the cosmic plan, like the overall plan, which involves a multitude of beings and races who are elevating us to a higher frequency, which basically means more DNA strands coming together, interweaving, enhancing our DNA so that we can live in a different dimensional version of Earth. That's the ultimate cosmic plan or mission here. So we all have a part in that. And the more we jam together, hence the co-creation, the faster and more fun it gets.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're going to go into that as well. Like, well, what are how do we jam with our co-creators, and what are the options right now?
Yeah,
the question I'm getting all the time. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to throw it out there because, as I mentioned to you before we hit record, I was, as I do, preparing to go to sleep, and I do my, my clearing and all my little processes. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes things will pop in of what I can start to work with, and then I go into sleep state around that. And the thing that came through around this topic of, because it's so ripe in the field about this co-creation, I think that's that funneling energy that's pulling us into the new year and beyond of the phase that we're moving into was really actualizing and grounding the core 12 people. Now, I know when I first came into my very abrupt cosmic awakening, that the whole focus, a part of it was to find the 12 core people, because from my understanding, that's how the soul groups or the monadic structures work. There's sort of 12 that are broken up into masculine, feminine. So when you can power up or bring those together, that brings, you think about one frequency match and the activation that you go through. Imagine, having, and I think as you go along your journey, you do start to collect or find those that sit in those pods. It's funny because I flicked through and I saw Sense8 on Netflix yesterday, and I was like, oh, I can't sit through that again, but I do like some of the concepts that come through that. But that's talking about like an um, eight people, four, four and four. But what was coming through was really actualizing solidly and grounding those 12 core people to activate the greater portion of the mission. And one thing that I believe that I have, and then I think that there's numerous 12s that, then lead into 144 and, so on and so forth. But they interlink and interweave so that you've probably got your core 12, and then you can interweave with another 12 that has like a similar essence, but not the exact core frequency that you belong to. And I think at times, let's say some of them may not be available to show up. I do believe that there can be step-ins that come in that can hold a similar frequency or be a part of that. I don't know what your thoughts are around that. Um, but that feels like very ripe and prominent and activating in the field right now. And so what we were discussing was like, how do you find those people? How do you, work with that if you're writing solo as so many people are? Um, and I feel like there is this energy or, yeah, this inquisitive, curious mind of a non-committal exploration that's starting to occur now, where and a lot of the feedback that I've heard from numerous people that I've spoken to is they're starting to get out there more so than they have done in a long time.
Yeah. And what does get out there mean? You know, like, it's so funny because I just find that the need to be around frequency people and gather, even if it's a group of three, every couple of days is like it's just pushing more frequent, more contact because the combination lock of different bodies produces different results, different activations, and we need that ongoing now. So there's a good question out there that we talked about, which is, well, what do people do if they don't feel like they have that where they live? It can totally be facilitated online. You can start a group um, on Zoom or whatever. But if you're really wanting to find your frequency people, we were just going, okay, well, how are people supposed to do this now? And we can host Zoom calls and just bring people together and the magic happens. It doesn't have to be an agenda or a structure or a teaching or a this or a that. And anyone can host them. But it's an open question for everyone out there listening. What could that look like? What would you be wanting? Does it need to be hosted or can you host it yourself? And how would you start that process so that you are coming together at least with frequency people once a week, in my view, right now, because we're looking at now the runway between now that we're finishing this series right on the full moon in December to the end of January, the next 6 weeks. What's your plan? What's your strategy to connect, be with your frequency people and see what comes through? I know here in Alice Springs, for example, someone initiated the Lay Love Down project, which is about working with ley lines and singing to the ley lines. We just gather and sit in the riverbed as often as whoever's around, as often as possible. There's that. I'm hosting calls as well sometimes with people physically and then other people on Zoom to talk about working with energetic fields and frequency domes. All sorts of things like are possible. So what could you produce or invite people into? And also what could you join that already exists? So both ways.
It feels like it's a combination and it starts, for me anyway, it starts from like, well, that came through last night and it almost feels like the threads have been kind of cast out to that net and then it's like allowing the opportunities to start to present and also going with those intuitive impulses of put something together if that's also a calling. And it feels like a bit of like a trial. Like it may not necessarily, you might go, like, for example, like every couple of days I walk down the street and there's this like new shop that's opened about creative workshops. And I feel a strong pull to go in there and just explore what's going on in there, and that's something that's local. But there's also, as I said, there's been this impetus to put together just a monthly Zoom call, but there hasn't been an agenda for it, but just sort of coming together. So there's lots of different avenues and aspects. And I think once you start to tune into the feel within yourself around that, opportunities will start to present themselves and start to come in, and you can just start to explore.
Yeah, and the image that keeps coming to mind is a pinball machine. It's like we're all these frequency balls moving around the board, but if you don't flick that lever, the ball goes down the hole. Lost opportunity. You've got to take action. You've got to do something. You can't just sit and wait for it to come to you. Yes, you can work with your field. yes, you can get more grounded and powerful in your field, so you attract that, but you also have to initiate. So don't underestimate the active part in this. So it's a combination of passive and active.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're all going to get really good at, is like
Mm-hmm.
going, okay, working with my field, yes, working with my body, just in my own solo zone. And then also, what am I doing to bring the other people in?
Mm-hmm.
What's the action I can take? Can I put out an invitation? Can I go somewhere, like you say, shop, or, put yourself in the public field and see what happens? And I often do that in a small town. It's great. So yeah, it's a time for experimentation. You mentioned that before we started. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's how we have to approach this.
Mm-hmm.
But really call it in now. You need a game plan between now and the end of January, and then the plan will reset again, and you'll need another one. But because you have different people and different combinations going on. But yeah, it feels like a game plan is required.
Mm-hmm.
So
And it could also be just saying yes. Like I think there are some initiators who are the ones that like to get the ball rolling and start, and then there's others that like to be in attendance and not necessarily in that position. So it
yeah,
may just be that you have been invited to X, Y, and Z, and you've declined multiple times for whatever reason, and it's just saying yes to those opportunities as they arise and just explore what could be in the pipeline for that.
yes. And coming back to the blueprints and what you got last night around the grounding of the 12 core people,
Mm-hmm.
it it just seems to me that this is relating to Shayana Dean's work with the Voyagers. She
Mm-hmm.
speaks about the 12 tribes. So anyone who hasn't read her books out there, doesn't matter. But they were written many years ago from a cosmic context of how we were seated here in human form, and what the 200,000 year plan is, basically to get back to our true human DNA, because we hybridized and went off track. So the same applies with my work with the 12 body types that are based on nature states. It's the same thing: 12, 12, 12 everywhere, 144,000 divided by 12. So there's this theme going on, and not to be in the limitation of numbers, but it's kind of like the
Mm-hmm.
12 is a gateway of some kind that gets us to a point where we have enough DNA strands to live and perceive multidimensionally as we're meant to. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the only reason why we're stuck in the matrix, is because we've lost that perception, because the DNA has been degraded. So we
Mm-hmm.
only see a certain level of perception that, oh, the sky's blue and that's the end of it. So there's so much more going on, and the perception is coming back online, which is
Mm-hmm.
why it's about to get super interesting in the age of Aquarius.
Mm. Sure is. Sure is. So,
Yeah, and you also mentioned something, Alicia, that was really poignant around, yeah, coming into groups, communities is great, but if you don't have a strong sense of what your
mm,
blueprint or contribution is, you can be taken off track.
yeah.
So it's really good to get clear on that, and that's where your work and my work dovetails, because I work with the physical blueprint mostly, and you're
Mm,
working with the energetic or cosmic blueprint, and can align with what your purpose or mission is here.
mm-hmm.
So when you're clear on that, you're going to magnetize other people who are clear on the same,
Yeah.
and then you can get to work and it can be awesome. But if there's that murkiness around who does what,
Mm,
then yeah, it can really slow things down, and there can be confusion and blow ups in communities, as we've both experienced, because people don't really know if that's their place.
mm, mm. Yeah. I think that's key important as you're going out into this expansion or experimental reconnecting, community-based thing is having as strong as possible sense of what you're here to bring or what you're and some people's is very multifaceted, you know. And I reflected myself because I feel like I can morph into any group. Like I can relate to any aspect. I have a very broad spectrum of things of knowledge you know. But when I come back to my core and what it is, it's all about the new children, the partnerships,
Mm.
and when I really sit and anchor into that, that feels like the most important phase to move forward in, where, I could jump into all sorts of SSP and this and that, and I do, and I have done, but now it's coming back to the core truth of what my most important piece of contribution to humanity is, which is, yeah, that
Yep.
aspect. And yeah, so I would encourage people, if they haven't, if they're at that stage, to really start to connect in deeper and deeper with their own purpose. And then that then gives clarity of the people that they're connecting with and how that can interweave beautifully.
And a good example of that is you and I were the reason we started this series is because we realized we had something in common, which was the pathogenesis, the new children. And so it was kind of like the core missions were aligned,
Mm.
and that's why this has worked. And we were both already independently clear on that.
Mm.
So that's really what you're looking for, is that kind of resonance. And if you haven't gotten to that core yet, that's cool. So you need
Mm.
to move through groups and feel more into, well, what is your mission? What
Mm.
are you wanting to experience here?
Mm-hmm.
Why did
Mm-hmm.
you come here? And
Mm.
get guidance if you need in that. But yeah, come with an openness and to explore.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And some of the other ways that people can do that that's just come to mind is I've facilitated 4 training groups in the last 12 months. They're all available on my website, and each one of them covers off to be able to connect with the blueprint and really anchor in and explore that. So any one of the 4, well, maybe 3 of the 4 would suffice to be able to, and how to clear away what's not of that resonance, because often
Mm.
it's a bit of excavation to really get to the core truth of that.
Yeah, 100%. Um, mm, I think that the way I approach things with bodies, and this can be a very confronting thing. I see it as a rite of passage almost, or an initiation in itself. When people send me full body photos from around the
Mm.
world, they've never met me.
Mm.
They're wearing bikinis or swimwear or yoga gear, as long as I can see all the body contours.
Mm.
But they haven't met me. So there's
Mm.
this huge element of trust stepping into that to send me 8 photos of their body, but it's meant to be a high barrier to entry, because I only want to meet people and work with people who really want to
Mm.
know the truth of what they're in this form for.
Mm. Mm.
Because those are the people who are going to work, are going to use it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
so it's kind of like, I keep seeing this whole process of evolution that we're on now, this Aquarian train, if you like, is around initiation after initiation. And yes,
Mm.
sometimes it's self-initiation, other times it involves one other person or a group of people. But this is where it's going to be really essential, so that how you're progressing in the physical,
Mm.
because things
Mm.
are going to get more and more virtual and energetic and all these things. And so we can have this perception that we're evolving, and we're not. Well,
Mm.
not
Mm.
evolving, but progressing in the physicality, which is the whole point. If we don't
Mm.
if we don't actually change our DNA in the physical, we're not really
Mm.
doing anything here.
Mm.
We're just
Mm.
having an experience in the
Mm. Mm.
ethers. And so
Mhm.
many people have not inhabited their bodies yet, because of trauma mostly,
Mm. Mm.
but also because of other cosmic contracts and stuff in place. And you've helped me heaps with that, A'Lisha, already, is to dissolve some of those contracts, look at what's really going on in the energetic field connected to other races, other dimensions that can be inhibiting your process here. So, yeah. That's just a little summary.
Yeah, so we were talking about how our work interlinks, and I don't do a lot in the physical body. Obviously, that's your area of expertise, but it's about matching the energetic template into the physical body.
Mm,
So both is incredibly important to be able to work with in collaboration, if you will. Um,
mm.
so yeah, you just triggered something, and it's like it's just percolating there because I had such an active dream space last night, and I won't go into all of it, but it was really about landing and grounding in the body. And I think I've spoken about this multiple
Mm,
times that we're in this sort of cosmic alignment gateway where there's a potential, let's say that there's a potential for more people to go through the walk-in upgraded process, which means that more of their consciousness is coming into the body, which if the body hasn't aligned and cleared, will bring up a lot of trauma or bring up a lot of discomfort as it's trying to integrate into the physicality. But there's also this right opportunity that as you come back, or more of you comes back, you bring back information from where you have been, where that aspect has been operating, let's say. And I think that that's
yes.
happening a lot right now. And what I was witnessing or being shown that there's this potential for the younger generation right now to really get their DNA activated. And I'm not talking about the younger ones who already have those starseed like qualities or be highly intuitive, and that's sort of a known thing by the parents or the families. This is those that have been laid dormant that are coming online now. And what we're showing is like they're coming back into their bodies,
Mm,
or a higher part of them for this new phase. So I don't know why that is pertinent, and maybe that comes into, we touched on the trafficking and the off-world trafficking, and I feel like this all is interwoven
mm.
somehow, because I feel like there's lost fragments of consciousness amongst
Yep.
children
Yep.
being restored,
Yep.
and this is also adult children too. I don't think it's limited to just that age group, but I feel like we're moving into a space now where more people are embodying, and that is what will activate um, those groups, those co-creation soul missions, because you have to have a level of remembrance before you can start to even ponder on the seeking of that.
Yep. And I think it's really important in that point to highlight that this is what they're trying to hijack right now, especially in the young ones, through technology, especially virtual reality. So the goggles.
Mm,
There are schools all through this country here rolling out VR goggles for primary school students. And what that does when they put the goggles on it, it actually splits the energetic field from the body. So I've seen it, school age kids putting the goggles on, suddenly they're not here.
mm,
They have
mm,
no connection to this realm unless someone
mm,
touches their body. And so there's a dissociation happening in the fields. It's very effective, it's very insidious. It's already happening without VR, just on the screens. So
mm,
the children now are already very dissociated from their bodies. This is so critical. They're
mm,
so
mm,
dissociated. They don't spend enough time in nature. They're spending time in boxes. They're not
mm,
moving their bodies enough. All of this stuff, the fact that the schools are rolling out all of this so quickly, is mind blowing. The teachers are using ChatGPT to write the children's school reports. It's like it's everywhere, and it's happening at the rate of knots, and it's happening very quietly,
mm,
very quietly. So, there's all this talk about there's not enough funding for this and there's not enough funding for that. Oh, but we'll throw 500,000 towards VR goggles for these kids. Oh, suddenly there's money,
mm,
you know.
mm,
So there's a huge agenda here.
mm, mm,
And so being connected to the body is more critical than ever. And that's what allows you to be a powerful pinball in the pinball machine. Your field is
Mhm.
huge when you
Yeah.
physically inhabit your body with your energy. And you will notice that because people will just be drawn to you like a moth to a flame.
Mhm.
And but we have to instill this in the children. We have to be examples of it, and we have to show them how to make that connection to
Mm,
their sensitivity, their
mm,
physicality. And so that's why I like to work with young ones, because they really tap into, oh, these are the superpowers in my lava
mm,
body, you know.
mhm,
So yeah, that's really cool, is finding ways to make it more appealing for kids to live in the real tangible
mm,
world rather than the virtual world. There's a
mm.
challenge.
So going off course, but coming back around, going back to the activation of the DNA, what things have you noticed as a part of perhaps your own DNA reactivation or awakening that changes in the physical body?
Um, well, for a start, I've grown 2 centimeters in the last few years.
Really?
Yeah, so
Huh.
that's a tangible thing, and like to the point where doctors and physios and stuff have said to me, "That's not possible," and I'm like, "Measure me." So, and I was told that my physical body would change. I just didn't know which parts, or that it would be height first. So that's something tangible.
Mhm,
But also it's the elongation and the energizing of the spine that
mm,
creates the new body. So everything comes back to the spinal fluid, the spinal cord, and that being infused with the true energy from the being
mm,
into the body. So most people, well, there's implants at the base of the skull. I mean, that's where they plug in the
mm,
avatars into the mainframe. So once you remove the implants, the physicality can change. Like I said on one of my calls, my jawline is very clearly changed.
mm,
And that what that means is that I'm grounding my energy in this realm,
mm,
in the physical realm. This is the physical part of the face. This is physical. This is the emotional zone. This is the mental imagination zone.
mm,
So you look for the changes in the different parts of the body.
mhm,
Um, and so people can change their body types if they make fundamental bone level changes in the body's dimensions. But I haven't seen anyone do that yet, unless they have a condition that morphs the bones, and that's pretty special in itself.
mm.
So that, yeah, so there's
Mm,
physical things you can look for. But in terms of the DNA changing, I think it's too soon to see a lot of the physical changes that are going to come.
mhm, mhm,
I think people's skin color is going to change, like stuff that we would never expect.
mm,
Um,
mm,
so, but like, for example, another change, I have an acupuncturist here that I've been seeing. She's a super scientific Chinese medicine expert, and I've been seeing her for 5 years, and she said to me the other day, she's like, your spine has changed. There's more space between the vertebrae, and
mm,
and
mm,
I was like, whoa, okay, so she's can tell
mm.
the physical changes happening in my spine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating, fascinating. Very cool. Just before you said that, I clocked back to an experience that I had, and I'm not alone in this. I know that other people have had that experience, but quite a number of years ago, after going through sort of a high level activation, I was sitting out in the sun one day, and a friend came to visit me, and she went, "Whoa." And I said, "What?" And she said, "You're emanating light through your skin." And I was like, "What?"
Oh,
And I looked down, and sure enough, there was like these like light crystal, and it was like glowing off the
mm,
skin.
mm,
And I was like, "God, did I put on lotion? No, what?" Like
mm,
I had to like go through the physical things of like, how is that possible? But it was all over. Um, there was a light emanation that was like temporary. So I think that that's potentially one thing that can happen. Um, and the other thing that
yeah.
comes to mind is the change in the eye color. Like I've had clients over the years who've had sessions and their eye color has significantly
Mm,
morphed and changed
mm.
after going through an activation. So quite
Uh,
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned weight as well. Is an easy one. Like it's much easier to change the soft tissue, but also the
Mm,
quality of the soft tissue, so the energy in the
mm,
flesh. And this
mm,
happened to me only a few days ago. I know I so my body pretty much my body goes through phases where it turns to plasma.
mm,
And so it's been I've had the plasma body since the start of December pretty much.
mm,
And so I know when I'm going through that plasma
mm,
body that there's physical changes about to take place. But I
mhm.
noticed literally overnight, and I know you've had this experience too. I woke up in the morning and I think about 2 kilos had melted off my body because it was a plasma basically reshaping, resculpting things.
Yep.
But also sort of going, oh, you don't need that fluid anymore. And it changes the frequency of the cells.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
yeah, I think, and weight is meant to fluctuate.
mm,
But again, it comes back to, well, what energy are you becoming,
mm,
and
mhm,
allow that to sculpt your physical body rather than I have to go to the gym and I have to count calories and it's a mathematical equation, is it? No, because if you can do that so quickly, which
mm,
we can,
mm.
when there's no implants or shit in the way, yeah, it's amazing what we can do.
Yeah, and on the I feel like I'm on the opposite spectrum of that at the moment. I just can't, there's a layer that I just can't seem to shed no matter what I try. And I know that that's when I'm always mulching through or processing a lot of energy. It shows up in the physical body as an expansion. And I think that's a precursor to sometimes when you're expanding, the
Mm,
body morphs into like
mm,
it blows up. And
mm.
once you've completed it, you'll wake up and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's often when you're bringing more power through because the body has to create a layer of, I guess, insulation or numbness. Um, Mind you, be careful with that because there is ongoing numbness, which is a problem, and then there's just temporary insulation, two different things.
Yeah.
Um, Insulation can just be like, I need to insulate while we bring this power in and adjust, and then the
Mm,
insulation can go, and then your body, like to me, that's the plasma process at play. But then, yeah, it is important to know, and because I see this in bodies constantly all the time, the numbness comes in at childhood.
mm,
Childhood wounding creates numbness. Sometimes it will actually restrict certain bone size. So the bone size actually stays stuck at childhood. So you've actually got a 10-year-old,
mm,
sorry, the pelvis the size of a 10-year-old, for example.
mm, mhm,
Some people have that because there's major deep bone level trauma.
mm,
And so you can see it in the bones. Sometimes you'll see it in the lack of flesh or the excess of flesh in certain parts, and it's
mhm,
not meant to be there. And that's an actual trauma response in the body.
mm. So fascinating, this the changes that we undergo. I do feel that, yeah, that possibility of rejuvenation. Have you ever seen that? Like I've always seen that as we move through this era into this, everyone who's sort of transitioning has the opportunity to regress back to their perfect form.
It's definitely an opportunity and it's definitely a process.
Mm,
But
mm,
this is where I find the frequency matches have a huge influence. Your frequency matches can not only heal your body,
mm.
just being in their presence, but you can also go into an anti-aging process or an
Yes,
ageless, say
that's, yeah,
agelessness.
yeah.
When you're in that field with frequency people. So again, this comes back to living together is the bomb.
Mm,
Like don't try and hold the frequency on your own forever. It has a purpose for a time, but then
mm,
eventually you want to be living with frequency people so that you have that field, you're living within that field. Otherwise, you're living, trying to live and hold that field in yourself in the matrix
mm, mm,
field.
mm,
Mm.
mm.
There's so many benefits to this, so many benefits.
Oh, where to go from here?
How do we finish this series? Well, we want to know what people think, like what their lingering questions are, I think, as well.
Mm,
From this point, is there anything we haven't answered? Is there anything they want after this point? And yeah, leaving it as an open question,
mhm. And of
perhaps.
course, if people want to get into contact with you to explore your work deeper, obviously your details are in the description box, but can you talk through that process a little bit? So you mentioned like the 8 photos. Is that part of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I um that's generally how I have worked for years and years now, where people like have to jump all in and
Mm-hmm.
get all 8 photos done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I will be making the process more incremental next year, and this is also to suit the younger ones who are just, what are more interested in the novelty to start with, because I can profile someone pretty much from age 16
Mm-hmm.
and up because their body has to be developed enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where they can just get their face analysis done and find out one of their creator types
Mm-hmm.
from
Mm-hmm.
their face analysis, and then do the full body and then do the advanced body analysis. So there'll be steps in the process. But I will be offering this in the meantime where, yeah, it's 8 photos. You email me and then we get on Zoom and the photos come up on screen, and we go through your creator types and I show you exactly where they're showing up and what those lines, body dimensions are showing, by the laws of nature, and your powers within that.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Very
And then,
fascinating.
yeah, and then I apply, I mean, my background's in business, so that's how I apply it. I apply
Mm,
it in a business context or whatever the creation is, writing a book, creating a community. It doesn't really matter. It's like, how are we going to use your body's template in creation,
mhm,
in whatever your creation of choice is, so that
mhm,
it is fully aligned and you're in the slipstream of your powers. You're not trying to be
mhm,
something you're not. And
mhm.
you also know exactly what co-creators are going to complement you.
Yeah,
Because
gotcha.
for years and years, like you brought up business last
Mm,
video, around how people, it's to get out of the system, start your own business. But from
mm,
years of business coaching, I just found far out this is a tall order. Most people don't have the business skills or the
mm,
natural acumen, I
mm.
guess, to do this and make it work. And so what's their option? And that's when I
Yeah.
went, oh, they've got to go by their template, and then they've got to become really skilled at calling other people in to do the things that's not their jam. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
where the creator types really help to guide people.
Yeah. Awesome. So helpful and so beneficial. And I agree with you. Not everyone is built in that business structural way. So
Mm,
that's probably part of where the co-creation needs to come in. That's where I've seen over the years of, constantly trying to start to build more of a community of people who have more of a spiritual based business or, some sort of new earth concept, and to bring that through because there are the business people who are very good at promotion and doing social media stuff. And there's the people that just are so incredibly talented, but just wouldn't even know, so
yep.
it's about being able to create a container that all skill levels are at available disposal that work and share
Bingo.
together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And so, for people who aren't familiar with my work, and I work very much within the energetic template and how that can be brought into the body. Also, I look at what is obstructing that, but I'm
Mm,
very good at reading the soul template, the blueprint, what your abilities are, where you're pulling them in from, how they interweave with other dimensional aspects, perhaps, and how that interweaves into past life, calling back in soul fragments. It's very broad spectrum, my work. So, with that emphasis on, frequency matches, divine counterparts, and also those who are preparing to bring in high frequency children through the co creative ability through their partnership. So that's in a nutshell, but very broad. And I do help people who are, you know, having a rough time with unpacking memories. So when people come to me and go, "Oh, this might be a bit weird," I can't honestly say that I've seen it all, but I feel like
Not for you.
there's not much that I flinch about these days. So
Yeah.
people kind of find me where they have no other reference point or resource to go to because I can hold the space of all sorts of weird and wonderful and dark, dark aspects as well. So,
Yes, and I can certainly vouch for that. You are amazing at that. And being able to go in all directions all at once with no limitations. I love that.
every session feels like it is exploring something new and
Yeah.
I have a very curious mind, so I'm always trying to look to understand the unexplainable. I used to joke about how I have you ever watched that TV series House?
Yeah.
Yeah, the diagnostic doctor. I kind of tend to practitioners rotate to me primarily. And so I tend to be the diagnostic of when you can't find the answer of something of a strange
Yeah.
anomaly. That's kind of
Yeah.
my jam to work out the weird. Um,
Yeah. Oh, God, you are a godsend. We all need one of those.
mm.
The witch doctor.
And very early on in my journey, I was researching a lot of different psychic surgeons and different people who've been known throughout history that work with the physical body and the energetic body and doing that sort of practice. And fascinated by that kind of concept of psychic surgery. And I kind of laugh because now I realize working very closely with the aspect of me that is like very Arcturian is psychic
Mm,
surgery is something that is very integrated into the practice. So, yeah, not that I necessarily, my focus isn't or hasn't necessarily been about the physical body, but when you work within the energetics and are able to
mm,
remove certain aspects,
mm.
the physical changes can be felt in the body based
Oh,
on,
yeah,
yeah.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah.
So,
And sometimes I get guided. I only remove implants or things like that in other people as if they're told.
mhm,
And and it has come about multiple times where they're in pain and then all of a sudden they're not in pain anymore.
mhm, mhm.
And I've done that for myself like countless times. So yeah, the power of this is so key. And I think more and more people are going to get really good at the
Mm.
psychic surgery and knowing how to do this stuff because we're all riddled with them.
The power of working with the energetics in the body is necessary. You can't have one without the other.
Mhm.
So that's, I guess, where we stand on what we have to offer individually, and then obviously looking at where it is that we can expand into more of a co-creative space to help facilitate or guide or just go with our creative impulses. So we'd love any sort of feedback that may come through beyond this series. I don't know, is there anything that we haven't covered that is
I have a list. I have a list of things we haven't covered. So I've already like named three other series that we could do on some of these topics. But we want to know what you guys think and what you want to know about. Yeah. So I think we'll be guided by that.
yeah, yeah. And I think that the final comments come is like really utilizing this time to clear out within the field and within your own body and perhaps memory imprints. Take this time now before we wrap up and conclude this year to create space for what is to come. That feels like a very, work through what you need to work through on your own individual level because we really are moving into this co-creative space or the energy is quite right for that. So where you're holding this resonance or some sort of trauma around, perhaps things that haven't worked in the past or whatever blockages you might hold around that, if that is a burning desire within you to wanting to open up and connect with people. Use this prime time now as an opportunity so you can be ripe in the zone for 2025.
Woohoo.
Mm.
Thank you so much for everyone listening and for you, A'Lisha, especially for just being an amazing host and facilitator of these conversations and all that you bring to the table and the magical container that you hold.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
really grateful we met.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your energy and your input and just bringing this all together. So much gratitude to you and the collaboration that's come through. And thank you everyone for watching who's followed through with this series. It's been really fun to jump on and record more regularly, and I'm really appreciative to that. So looking forward to doing something new or more as we move forward. So thank you very much, and until next time, in whatever
Yay.
capacity, we will connect with you. All right, much love. Bye bye.
Bye.